Again, auto-regulation, right? Automatic adjustments of blood flow to the tissues in proportion to the tissue requirements at any given time, right? Yes, we talked about that. At certain times, I need blood flow to my muscles. At certain times, I need blood flow to my gut, right? And so my body is constantly making adjustments. Where does that blood need to go? And again, auto meaning self, auto-regulation, okay? Now, let's talk about the inside of those capillaries. The inside of those capillaries, right? Again, make sure you draw this one. Nitric, nitric oxide, and the opposite of that is endo, Thelins, endothelins, right? Nitric oxide, vasodilator, decrease BP, right? Endothelins, well, let's put it this way. Yeah, vasodilator and vasoconstrictor, vasoconstrictors, vasoconstrictors, right? So the lining, the endothelium, that very inner single cell layer, that endothelium, guess what? It gives off these hormones, nitric oxide and the endothelins, and they do the opposite. Here, blood vessels get bigger. Here, blood vessels get smaller, right? Right? And so that way you just get just the right amount of blood flow, yes? Now, what's the big deal about nitric oxide? The big deal about nitric oxide is that they just discovered this many years ago, and or a few years ago, not that many years ago, okay? Nitric oxide, yes? Guys, there were several guys. I saw one, I think his name is Louis Ignaro or something like that, an Italian guy from New York. And he discovered what it does, and guess what it does? Vasodilators, right? Where's the one place where men want vasodilators? Right? Yes? And so, as soon as he discovered that and figured that out, the drug companies went to work on drugs, and guess what you got? Viagra. That's exactly right, right? Viagra increases the nitric oxide, okay? You get vasodilation, right? So the man gets vasodilation to his penis, he gets an erection, right? Oh, by the way, if you clog up all your arteries or smoking and drinking, right? Then, guess what? You're not, I don't mean to be crude, ladies. You're not getting it up. Sorry, it's not happening. No, right? If you clog all those arteries, yes? And what does this do? A very powerful vasodilator. Oh, by the way, fascinating. When you shut your mouth and you breathe through your nose, there's much more nitric oxide in your lungs. And what does nitric oxide do in your lungs? It kills germs. It kills germs. It's a powerful germ killer in your lungs. But if you're always breathing through your mouth, right? Then guess what? You're not getting that nitric oxide. And it's made up in the sinuses. And with your mouth shut, and you breathe through your nose, it goes down in here. Right? Yes? Yes? So, keep your mouth shut, breathe through your nose. Right? But you can't do that when you're talking. But anyway, I'm like, Yes? We're also going to talk in another chapter or two about how when you keep your mouth shut and you breathe through your nose, guess what? The hemoglobin gives off oxygen. Christian Bohr taught us that. Right? The Bohr effect. But anyway, we're going to talk about that in another chapter. But anyway, make sure you get these, the endothelins. Okay? The endothelins versus nitric oxide. Okay? Nitric oxide, very important. Very important. Yes? Don't take too much Viagra, by the way. That's a way bad deal. They have to take a big needle to you if you do. Yeah, it's not good. I'm serious. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I watched one of those medical shows, and this guy was like 25 years old, and he'd taken a bunch of Viagra because, anyway, yeah. finish this. Real quickly, let's finish this. Let's talk a little bit about, we already talked about bulk blood flow across the capillary walls. That's what I started with. That's this, right? Remember, pressure is higher here, pressure is less here. Hydrostatic pressure, I'm saying, yes? You got your pushing forces, hydrostatic pressure pushing out. You got the osmotic pressure sucking in. And depending on what the pressure is, when you balance the two, you get net filtration. If everything works good, you got about a +10 net filtration over here. You push out 20 liters. By the time you get over here to the venous side, you got a -8. So you suck back in about 17 liters. 20 minus 17 is 3. Those extra 3 liters, we'll talk about that Monday night, right? They'll get reabsorbed through the lymphatic system, okay? Now, let's talk about circulatory shock. Circulatory, this is very easy, shock, right? Okay? Number 1, hypovolemic, Hypovolemic. Hypovolemic shock, right? Right? If you cut an artery or you get burned. Okay, let me explain that. Hypovolemic. It sounds exactly like it is. Hypo, below, volemic, the volume. If the volume of your blood suddenly goes down, your blood pressure is going to drop, right? If you cut yourself and you spurt out a lot of blood and then you stop it, right? Your blood pressure is going to be low because you lost that fluid from the circulatory system. Oh, by the way, if you get a very bad burn, remember, if you get a bad burn, right, the plasma membrane is burned and all the liquid, right, nothing's holding it back in. So the burn patients, when they come into the hospital, they use, instead of a person using 4 liters of fluid in a day, they'll use a dozen, maybe 14 in a day to try and keep their fluid levels up, okay, right? So hypovolemic shock, hypo, right, below, volemic for volume. Yes? Okay. We have another kind of shock called vascular, right? And you don't lose volume, right? You don't lose volume, but that comes from extreme vasodilation, okay? And that can be from anaphylaxis, 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 right? Some people are allergic to bee stings. Some people are allergic to peanuts, right? If you have a severe allergy and you come in contact with that allergen, your blood vessels throughout your whole body can do this, get way big. And when those blood vessels, what are the veins called? Capacitance vessels, right? So when those blood vessels get way big, that blood doesn't get back to your heart. So even though you didn't lose blood, it's like your heart's not getting enough blood, right? When it comes from a bee sting, that's called anaphylactic shock or anaphylaxis, right? A bee sting or allergy. Okay? And that is caused by a release of histamines, right? A release of histamines, right? Remember, histamine, inflammatory chemical, and it causes vasodilation. Oh, by the way, in our gut, it helps us digest our food. But for the blood vessels, it's a major vasodilator. Yes? You get a bad cold, you take antihistamines to keep your nose from running, right? Okay? Now, neurogenic shock. Anaphylaxis or neurogenic shock, okay? And this is failure of the autonomic nervous system regulation, okay? talk about how you can get neurogenic shock, right? Number one, septicemia, S-E-P-T-I-C-E-M-I-A. Let me explain. Septicemia, okay? If you get a bad blood infection, there are certain germs that give off toxins, and those toxins are very toxic. Don't you like that one? Right? Can you say Vice President? Yes? But anyway, those germs give off toxins, and the toxins make them blood vessels get very, very big. And if that happens enough, you won't get enough blood back to your heart and you go into shock. Okay? Septicemia, massive bacterial infection, and let me think of the name of the strep. Strep is way bad about this. If you get a really super bad strep infection, okay, it can cause this, septicemia, right? When you say, oh, the patient's septic, right, that means his infection's going way over through the whole system. He's septic, he's toxic, right? Or number two, neurogenic can be transient, right? Transient, you know? I don't usually hardly take much medicine at all. Every once in a while I have to take an aspirin because I got a class to teach or something like that, but very rarely, yes. And so what I believe is that I get in the tub, I take a hot soaker, and I mean hot. I mean hot, hot, hot. I mean like lobster hot, okay? Right? I believe that cures a multitude of ills, yes? But the thing is, you take a hot soaker like that, when you stand up and go to get out of bed, you better be hanging on to something because, right, orthostatic, hypotension, yes? Have you ever, when you were really young, you go to the pool and you got your bikini on, you lay there for an hour in the sun, and then you get up and you go, oh, right? It's the same thing. You got a bunch of vasodilation. Why do you have vasodilation? If you're in the tub, all that hot water around you, you heat up your blood and your blood vessels open up, right? Or if you lay in the sun and you get hot from laying in the sun, that blood's hot, it comes to the surface. So not as much as getting pumped back to your heart and your blood pressure's low, okay? So, neurogenic shock can come from septicemia, right? That's infection, bad infection, bacterial toxins, and transient, which can be sunbathing or hot tub, right? Around the hot tubs, they got a sign, right? Sometimes not good for cardiac patients or something like that. If you've ever seen one of those signs, that's what they're talking about, folks, right? Yes. Sometimes people can get out of the hot tub and go walking across to sit down and boom, fall down or slip. Well, sometimes it's slip because their feet are wet, but sometimes it's because this neurogenic shock, okay? So anyway, yes? Now, one more time, right? Circulatory shock, different versions of it. Number one, hypovolemic, simple. You lose volume. You either cut yourself or you get burned real bad. Number two, vascular, because the blood vessels got real big, right? That can be anaphylaxis, yes? What do you do for anaphylaxis? What do you hit yourself with? EpiPen. The EpiPen, right? The EpiPen, right? Epi for epinephrine. What does epinephrine do? Blood vessels get small, blood pressure goes up, right? EpiPen, right? A bee sting or an allergy or something like that. And again, neurogenic. You can't get a bad infection. And the microbes give off toxins that cause massive, right? I don't know if you know this, those germs are trying to kill you, right? Yes, okay? But anyway, and transient. From you laid out in the sun too long, or you took a hot soaker, or you got in the hot tub. Yes? Right? So those are the different forms of shock that we talk about. Okay? Yes? So any questions? Any questions? No? Okay. Have a great weekend, and see you next time. And did everybody turn their paper in?
Yes, sir.
Yes? Excellent. Okay. Please do not erase. Excuse me.
At 9 or what?
I don't know. I'm just thinking like, what are
Yes? You work in the hospital?
I work at the nursing home.
It's a nursing home. Yes? You know what C. diff is?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Bad deal. Bad deal for these old folks.
Wait,
You know?
what were you talking about when you told me that earlier?
When I told you what earlier?
When you were like, keep it up.